The conference room on Station Harmony had seen many emergency meetings, but never one quite like this. Counselor Thesh watched the holographic recording for the third time, his multiple limbs trembling slightly. The message came from Velen Prime, and it showed scenes that made even his ancient heart ache. The Velen were dying. Their beautiful water cities, built over generations of peace, burned in the background. In the foreground, a Velen elder spoke with desperate clicks and whistles that the translator rendered into Galactic Standard. Behind him, children were being dragged away by Krath soldiers. The invaders moved with cruel efficiency, their armored bodies towering over the fragile aquatic beings. "Please," the elder's translated voice echoed in the chamber. "Anyone who can hear this. We have no weapons, no armies. We never needed them. The Krath came without warning. They take our young for labor camps. They strip our oceans of resources. In 3 weeks, they have killed thousands. In 3 months, we will be extinct. Please, someone help us." The message ended. The counselors sat in heavy silence. Thesh turned to the military advisor, a being from a warrior culture that had evolved past violence centuries ago. "What can our peacekeeping forces do?" The advisor's response was grim. "Nothing immediately. We have forces committed to 12 other conflicts. To pull them would take months. To assemble a new force would take longer. The Velen do not have months." Another counselor spoke up, her voice filtering through a breathing apparatus. "What about the Krath? Can we negotiate?" "The Krath Dominion does not negotiate," Thesh said bitterly. "They conquer. They enslave. They move on. By the time we organize a diplomatic mission, Velen Prime will be a mining colony worked by Velen slaves." The room fell silent again. Every counselor knew the truth. The Galactic Council had built itself on principles of peace and cooperation. Those principles worked wonderfully when everyone agreed to follow them. The Krath did not agree. A junior aide entered the chamber, moving quickly to Thish's side. She whispered something that made his limbs stiffen. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Yes, counselor. The database is clear." Thesh looked at the assembled leaders. "There may be one option. 2 years ago, a new species joined the galactic community. They've remained isolated, focused on their own worlds. But they have military capability, and their embassy is here on the station." "Which species?" someone asked. "The humans. From Earth." The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Everyone had heard of humans. They were the Deathworlders. Stories about Earth circulated through the galactic community with a mixture of fascination and horror. A Class 12 death world. Gravity so strong it would crush most species. Weather systems that killed. Predators at every level of the ecosystem. Diseases that made even microbiologists from plague worlds nervous. And the humans had evolved there. Had thrived there. Had become the dominant species of a planet that seemed designed to prevent intelligent life from ever developing. "Do we want Deathworlders involved in this?" one counselor asked carefully. Thesh made a gesture of uncertainty with 3 of his limbs. "I do not know. But the Velen are dying. We can debate philosophy after they are saved." The vote was close, but it passed. Send the distress call to Earth's embassy. Request assistance. Hope that the Deathworlders had retained some compassion in their brutal evolution. Ambassador. Yuna received the message in her office 3 levels down from the council chamber. She sat alone, as she preferred. The office was kept at temperatures and gravity that made most species uncomfortable. Humans found it normal. She played the Velen distress call once. Her face remained still, but her fingers tightened on the armrest. She had seen similar scenes before, back on Earth. Different species, same cruelty. The strong preying on the weak. The armed destroying the peaceful. Yuna had spent 20 years in Earth's special forces, before becoming a diplomat. She had scars that told stories she never shared. She understood violence in ways the Galactic Council never could. They saw war as a philosophical problem. She saw it as applied physics and biology. The side with better weapons, better training, and stronger will to survive usually won. The Velen had none of those things. She pulled up her personal communication device and entered a code she had hoped never to use. The connection took only seconds. The face that appeared on the screen was weathered and hard, marked by the same kind of scars Yuna carried. "Doyon," she said simply. "Ambassador?" Commander Doyon replied. He was on a ship somewhere in Earth's outer colonies. Behind him, Yuna could see the familiar gray walls of a military vessel. "This is not a social call. No, I am sending you a file. The Galactic Council has requested Earth's assistance with a situation." Doyon's eyes narrowed slightly as he reviewed the data. Yuna watched his face remain professionally neutral, but she knew him well enough to see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was already planning the operation. "The Council knows what they are asking for," he said finally. "They know they are asking for help. They do not know what that help will look like. They will learn." Doyon looked off-screen, probably at his tactical officer. "We can be there in 72 hours. 3 ships. Full company strength. Will that be sufficient?" Yuna did the math in her head. A human company was roughly 200 soldiers, plus support staff, against a Krath occupation force that likely numbered in the tens of thousands. By galactic standards, it was insane. By human standards, it was a calculated risk. "It will have to be," she said. "Payment terms? I will negotiate with the Velen government. Standard mercenary rates plus hazard bonuses. You know the Council will not pay for this directly." Doyon nodded. The Galactic Council had strict policies against hiring mercenaries. They preferred to pretend such things did not exist in civilized space. Earth had no such illusions. Human history was written in mercenary contracts as much as national armies. "Understood. We will leave within the hour." Doyon out. The connection closed. Yuna sat in her office for a long moment, considering what she had just set in motion. The Council had asked for help. She had given them Deathworlders. They would save the Velen, but salvation from Earth always came with a price. She sent a brief message back to the Council chamber. "Earth will respond to the Velen distress call. Expect human forces to arrive within 3 standard days." The message did not mention that the forces were mercenaries, not military. It did not mention that humans fought differently than any species the galaxy had seen in centuries. It did not warn them that they had not requested peacekeepers. They had awakened predators. 3 ships broke orbit from Earth's moon 6 hours later. The Reaper's Dawn, a heavy assault carrier. The Iron Wind, a destroyer configured for orbital bombardment. The Silent Knife, a stealth vessel that did not officially exist in any registry. On the bridge of the Reaper's Dawn, Commander Doyon addressed his officers. Hana stood at tactical, her short frame hiding muscles developed under Earth's crushing gravity. Jiho leaned against the engineering console, already running calculations for weapon deployment. "Simple mission," Doyon said, though everyone in the room knew nothing was ever simple. Velen Prime is occupied by Krath forces. The Velen are peaceful, no military capability. The Krath are slavers and resource extractors. We remove the Krath. We free the Velen. We get paid. Rules of engagement? Hannah asked. Doyen's smile was not pleasant. The Krath take children for slave labor. There are no rules. The officers nodded. They understood. In human military doctrine, certain lines, once crossed, removed all protection. Slavers who targeted children had crossed every line that mattered. "Time to jump," the navigator called out. The three ships engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished from Earth's space. Behind them, the moon continued its eternal orbit. Indifferent to the violence about to be unleashed in its creator's name, ahead, in the darkness between stars, the Velen huddled in the ruins of their cities and prayed to their water gods for salvation. They did not know that their prayers had been answered. They did not know what form that answer would take. In 72 hours, they would learn what it meant when Deathworlders went to war. The Krath orbital blockade detected the human ships when they were still 3 light minutes out from Velen Prime. The commander of the blockade, a veteran of 30 conquests, studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. 3 ships, small by Krath standards, no escort fleet, no support vessels, no diplomatic shuttles broadcasting peace intentions. Just 3 warships approaching at attack speed. Transmit standard dominance protocol, the commander ordered. His communication officer complied, sending the message that had made countless species surrender without a fight. Submit or be destroyed. The human response came 10 seconds later. No words, no negotiation. Just weapons fire. The Reaper's Dawn opened up with its main railguns, accelerating tungsten slugs to a significant fraction of light speed. The physics were simple and brutal. Mass times velocity equals force. The Krath shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did nothing against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The first Krath cruiser disintegrated. The second lost its entire command section. The third managed to return fire, its plasma cannons painting the void with superheated gas. The bolts hit the Reaper's Dawn dead center. The human ship kept coming. On the bridge, Diane watched the damage reports scroll across his display. Hull breaching on decks 7 and 8. Hull breaching on decks 7 and 8. Casualties minimal. Humans, evolved under crushing gravity and brutal conditions, had built their ships the same way they built everything, to survive. Return fire. Target their weapon systems. I want prisoners for intelligence. I coordinated the tactical response. The 3 human ships moved like pack hunters, a behavior so ingrained in human psychology that it showed up in everything from sports to warfare. They surrounded the Krath formation, cut off escape routes, and systematically disabled rather than destroyed. The Krath commander had seen enough. He gave the order to board the human vessels. If projectile weapons gave the Deathworlders an advantage at range, close combat would equalize things. The Krath were evolved ambush predators. Their boarding tactics had never failed. They had never fought humans. The boarding pods latched onto the Reaper's Dawn's hull and burned through. Krath assault teams poured into the corridors, their venomous claws extended, their pack coordination perfect. They moved in groups of 6, covering all angles, ready to overwhelm any defense. Hana met them in Corridor 12B with a squad of 20 human soldiers. The fight lasted 4 minutes. The Krath were fast and strong by galactic standards. They had reflexes honed by millions of years of hunting. They had natural weapons that could pierce most armor. Against any other species, they would have been unstoppable. But humans were not any other species. The first, Krath the Die, learned that human reaction time, driven by a predator-prey evolutionary history, was faster than theirs. The human soldier he lunged at simply stepped aside and put 3 bullets through his skull before he hit the ground. The second group of Krath learned that human armor was designed to stop more than claws. It was built to withstand impacts, cuts, and penetrations from the thousands of ways humans had invented to kill each other over millennia of warfare. The third group learned that humans, when pressed, would use anything as a weapon. Hannah killed 2 Krath with a broken support pipe, her Deathworld muscles turning a piece of scrap into a club that crushed their EXOSKELETON stun. The fourth group tried to retreat and learned that humans were persistence hunters. They did not let prey escape. When the shooting stopped, Hana stood among the bodies and keyed her comm. Boarding teams neutralized. 16 craft dead, 2 captured. We have 3 wounded, none serious. Doyen's voice came back calm and professional. Acknowledged. Bring the prisoners to interrogation. Medical teams are standing by. The craft commander watched his boarding team's life signs vanish from his display and felt something unfamiliar. Fear. These Deathworlders fought like nothing in the galactic database. They were fast, strong, and absolutely ruthless. Worse, they seemed to enjoy it. Withdraw to Velen Prime surface, he ordered. We will use the natives as shields. The remaining craft ships broke orbit and fled toward the planet. It was a standard tactical retreat. The Galactic Council's peacekeeping forces would never risk civilian casualties by pursuing. The humans would surely follow the same rules. They did not. Ji-Ho watched the craft retreat from her engineering station and smiled without humor. They are running to the population centers. Classic hostage doctrine. Can we stop them before they reach the cities? Doyen asked. Not all of them. 3 will make it. Then we go to the surface. Prepare for planetary assault. The human ships entered orbit over Velen Prime. Below them, the planet's blue-green ocean sparkled in the light of the system star. The Velen cities, built on floating platforms and coastal areas, were visible even from orbit. So were the burn marks where craft weapons had struck. The craft had fortified positions in 6 major population centers. They had anti-aircraft weapons, shields, and thousands of Velen hostages. By every standard military doctrine in the galaxy, this required a siege, negotiations, careful planning to minimize civilian casualties. Humans had different doctrines. Begin ballistic insertion, Diane ordered. The term meant nothing to the craft watching from below. They were about to learn. Drop pods launched from the human ships, but these were not the gentle descent vehicles used by other species. These were armored shells designed for one purpose: get soldiers to the ground as fast as possible. They did not slow down. They did not need landing thrusters. They simply fell. Inside one pod, a soldier named Minho checked his harness for the 10th time. Around him, his squad did the same. They were all veterans of Earth's gravity, which meant they could survive forces that would kill most galactic species. The pod shook as it hit atmosphere, heating to temperatures that would cook anyone not protected by thermal shielding. 30 seconds, the automated voice announced. Minho breathed steadily. He had done this 100 times in training, a dozen times in combat operations across human space. It never got comfortable. The pod was going to hit the ground at terminal velocity. The internal shock absorbers would take most of the impact. His bones and muscles, built by a death world, would handle the rest. The pod struck Earth with a boom that rattled windows 3 blocks away. The harness crushed into Minho's chest. His vision grayed. His bones creaked. The shock absorbers exploded with the force of the impact. The pod door blew open and Minho stumbled out, already bringing his weapon up. Around him, 200 other pods had landed in a rough circle around a craft fortification. Soldiers emerged, some limping, most ready to fight. 2 pods had failed, their occupants killed by the impact. The survivors did not pause to mourn. They had a job to do. The craft defenders stared in disbelief at the crater field that had appeared in the center of their occupied city. What kind of species dropped their soldiers like bombs? What kind of biology could survive that impact? They learned the answer when the humans opened fire. Minho's squad moved through the streets with practiced efficiency. The craft had fortified buildings and set up kill zones. Standard urban warfare, the kind humans had been perfecting for centuries. Every soldier in Minho's unit had trained in cities that replicated alien architecture. They knew where to expect ambush. They knew how to clear rooms. They knew how to move through a combat zone where every window could hide an enemy. A craft fighter jumped from a second-story window, claws extended for a killing strike. Suji, Minho's second-in-command, shot him twice before he hit the ground. Another craft fired from cover with a plasma weapon. The shots went wide. Human combat doctrine emphasized accuracy under stress, hundreds of hours on the range-building muscle memory. The return fire did not miss. Throughout the city, similar scenes played out. The Krath were skilled fighters, but they had evolved their tactics fighting species that valued individual lives, that hesitated, that could be intimidated. Humans valued lives, but they had learned on Earth that sometimes survival required sacrifice. They did not hesitate. And after generations of humans scaring each other with stories and movies, very little intimidated them. By nightfall, the humans had established the secure zones around 3 of the 6 occupied cities. The Krath pulled back, regrouped, and prepared for a counterattack at dawn. They still held thousands of Velen hostages. By all galactic military theory, this gave them the advantage. But humans did not fight by galactic military theory. As the sun set on Velen Prime, Taiyang settled into a sniper position 3 kilometers from a Krath command post. His rifle was a precision instrument, effective at ranges the Krath considered impossible. He could see Krath guards moving on the walls, backlit by their own lights. "Target acquired," he whispered into his comm. "Krath commander. Second building, third window. Wind?" His spotter asked. "Negligible. Range 3.2 kilometers. Compensating for local gravity." Taiyang breathed out slowly and squeezed the trigger. The rifle barely moved. 3 kilometers away, a Krath commander collapsed with a bullet through his brain. The war for Velen Prime had begun, and the Krath were learning that they had not invaded a planet defended by peacekeepers. They had awakened predators. Commander Grek studied the tactical display in his fortified command center and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans had been on Velen Prime for only 3 days, and already they controlled half the occupied territory. His forces, which had conquered 40 worlds using proven tactics, were being systematically destroyed by a force that should not exist. The humans were too fast, too aggressive, too willing to take casualties that any reasonable species would avoid. "Status report," he demanded. His tactical officer clicked his mandibles nervously. "We have lost contact with 7 platoons. Estimated human casualties are minimal. They are advancing on all fronts. Deploy the hostages. Put Velen civilians in every defensive position. The humans will have to negotiate." It was standard Krath doctrine. No species in the Galactic Council would risk civilian deaths. The humans would be forced to talk, to bargain, to allow Grek to extract favorable terms. He might even be able to withdraw with most of his forces and some plunder intact. He did not understand humans. At the human forward base, Doyan received Grek's message. The Krath commander offered negotiation. Withdraw human forces. Allow Krath extraction of resources, and no civilians would be harmed. It was delivered with the confidence of someone who had used these tactics successfully for years. Doyan deleted the message without responding. Instead, he opened a channel to all Krath positions on the planet. His voice was calm, almost friendly. That made the message more terrifying. "Krath forces. This is Commander Doyan of Earth's military contractors. You have 6 hours to release all Velen captives and surrender your weapons. After that deadline, we will show no mercy. This is your only warning." Grek listened to the message and actually laughed. Mercy? These Deathworlders thought they could intimidate him with threats. He had Velen children in his prison camps. He had civilians positioned at every defensive point. The humans would break themselves against his shields, or they would negotiate. He had 6 hours to learn how wrong he was. Hannah gathered her squad leaders in a building the humans had cleared and converted into a tactical center. Maps of the city covered every wall, marked with craft positions and civilian concentrations. Intelligence from freed Velen refugees painted a clear picture. Krath used hostages not as shields, but as leverage. They did not actually want to kill civilians. Dead hostages had no value. The Krath think they understand warfare, Hannah said to her assembled officers. They think hostages make them safe. They are wrong. Minho spoke up from where he leaned against a wall. If we attack while they hold civilians, people will die. People are already dying, Hannah replied. Every day the Krath hold this planet, more Velen die in labor camps. More children are taken. The question is not whether people die. The question is whether we allow slavers to use compassion as a weapon. It was harsh logic, but everyone in the room understood it. They were humans. Their history was written in difficult choices. Every soldier present had studied their own planet's wars, had learned that sometimes the path that saved the most lives looked cruel in the moment. Suji pulled up a tactical map. Krath psychology profile says they are pack predators. They value chain of command. Kill the leaders, the rest will break. Then we kill the leaders, Hannah said simply. Quietly, precisely, before they can hurt hostages. The plan took shape. Human snipers like Taiyang would eliminate Krath officers at maximum range, where the Krath could not respond. Infiltration teams would enter fortified positions through routes the Krath considered impassable. Every tactic would exploit the fundamental difference between species that evolved in safe environments and species that evolved where every day was a fight to survive. When the 6-hour deadline passed, Grek prepared for the human assault. He positioned Velen civilians in windows, on walls, in every location the humans would have to fire on. His soldiers were ready. His shields were at maximum power. The humans did not assault his positions. Instead, a single bullet, fired from 3 kilometers away, killed his second-in-command. Before Grek could react, another shot killed his artillery coordinator. A third killed his communications officer. Find those snipers! Grek screamed. But human snipers were trained to shoot from distances the Krath could not even see. Taiyang and a dozen others like him had found positions the Krath never expected anyone to use. They fired, relocated, and fired again. Each shot removed a piece of the Krath command structure. While the snipers worked, Minho led an infiltration team through the city's water system. The Krath evolved on a dry world, had not considered that humans could hold their breath for minutes at a time, could swim through pipes, could emerge inside fortified buildings from directions that seemed impossible. His team surfaced in the basement of a Krath stronghold. Above them, they could hear Krath soldiers shouting orders, preparing for an assault that was not coming from the direction they expected. Minho signaled his squad. They moved up the stairs in perfect silence, a skill learned from 1,000 training exercises in Earth's forests where every sound could mean death. The Krath never saw them coming. The fight in the building was short and brutal. Humans in close quarters fought with a ferocity that terrified the Krath. These were not soldiers maintaining perimeter defenses. These were predators who had breached into the den. Minho's squad cleared the building room by room, evacuating freed Velen civilians as they went. By the time Grek realized what was happening, the humans had already freed 3 hostage locations and killed 15 of his senior officers. His careful defensive positions were collapsing not from frontal assault but from precision strikes that dismantled his command structure. Retreat to the fortress, he ordered. All forces, fall back to the northern continent. We consolidate there. It was a sensible tactical decision. The fortress in the north was Grek's strongest position, built into a mountain with shields that could withstand orbital bombardment. He would gather his remaining forces, collect as many hostages as possible, and force the humans to negotiate from a position of strength. The retreat took 2 days. Greg managed to bring 5,000 Velen civilians with him, along with 3,000 Krath soldiers. The fortress shields activated. Automated defenses came online. He sent a message to the human commanders. I hold 5,000 Velen lives. Grant me safe passage off this planet, or I will execute them all. You have 24 hours. This time, Do-Yun did not respond at all. Instead, Yi-Ho studied the fortress shields from her engineering station aboard the Reaper's Dawn. Shield technology was standard across the galaxy, based on physics that everyone understood. Energy shields deflected energy weapons. The Krath had the best shields in known space, tuned perfectly to stop plasma, lasers, and particle beams. But shields were designed by species who fought with energy weapons. The shields will not stop kinetic strikes, Ji-Ho reported to Do-Yun. They are not calibrated for solid projectiles. How much kinetic force? Do-Yun asked. Ji-Ho ran the calculations. If we hit them with conventional artillery at the right frequency, we can overload the generators. The shields will collapse for approximately 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Do-Yun repeated. Hannah, is that enough time? Hana had been planning this assault since Greg started his retreat. If we insert from high altitude, yes. But the timing has to be perfect. And make it perfect. The assault began at dawn. The Reaper's Dawn and Iron Wind opened up with every kinetic weapon they had. Railgun slugs, artillery shells, even physical debris accelerated to high speeds. The fortress shields flared bright as they absorbed the impacts, each hit draining the generators a little more. Inside the fortress, Greg watched his shield strength indicators dropping and felt satisfaction. The humans were wasting ammunition on shields designed to handle this exact attack. His fortress would hold. The hostages gave him all the leverage he needed. Then the shields collapsed. Hannah and her strike team had been falling from the stratosphere for 3 minutes. Their armored suits protecting them from the cold and low oxygen at extreme altitude. They fell in perfect silence, no engines, no heat signatures. Just gravity doing its work. When the shields collapsed, they were 200 meters above the fortress. Their jump jets fired at the last possible second, bleeding off just enough speed that the impact would not kill them. They hit the fortress roof like meteors, armored boots cracking the reinforced surface. The Krath guards had exactly 3 seconds to realize what was happening before Hana's team opened fire. The battle inside the fortress was chaos. Krath soldiers tried to form defensive lines, but the humans moved too fast, coordinated too well. Every human soldier had trained for this exact scenario, hostage rescue, against numerically superior forces in confined spaces. They used stun weapons where Velen civilians were present, lethal force everywhere else. Minho's squad found the main holding area where most of the Velen were kept. The guards there tried to threaten the hostages. Suji shot both guards before they could finish the threat. The freed Velen screamed in their whistling language, terrified by the violence, confused by their salvation. We are here to help, Minho said, though his translator. Follow us. Stay quiet. We will get you out. Greg made his last stand in the command center. He was surrounded by his personal guard, elite soldiers who had never lost a fight. They heard the humans coming and prepared for glorious combat. Han Councillor Dash arrived at Velen Prime 1 week after the fortress fell. His ship entered orbit over a planet transformed. The Krath blockade was gone, either destroyed or captured. In its place, human vessels maintained a disciplined perimeter. Below, on the surface, the cities that had burned under Krath occupation were now secured by human patrols. It should have been a relief. Instead, Thesh felt deeply uneasy. His shuttle landed at what had been a Krath command center and was now a human military base. The transformation was visible everywhere. The craft had built for intimidation, tall structures designed to make conquered species feel small. The humans had torn down anything unnecessary and converted the rest into functional spaces for weapon storage, medical facilities, and command operations. Ambassador Yuna met him at the landing pad. She wore formal diplomatic attire, but Thesh noticed she still moved like a soldier. Every gesture was economical. Every glance assessed potential threats. "Counselor," she said with a small bow, "welcome to Velen Prime." "Ambassador Yuna, I have come to assess the situation and mediate the conclusion of hostilities." "The hostilities are concluded," Yuna replied. "The Krath are defeated. The Velen are free." "Yes, I have read the reports. Your military efficiency is remarkable." Thesh paused, choosing his words carefully. "Perhaps too remarkable." Yuna's expression did not change. "Would you prefer we had been less efficient? Would you prefer the Velen still be enslaved?" "I prefer warfare conducted according to the Galactic Convention. The reports I have received suggest numerous violations." "Then let me show you what we violated the convention to prevent," Yuna said. She led Dash through the city. Everywhere, Velen civilians moved freely, though many still bore the marks of Krath occupation. Medical stations staffed by human personnel treated injuries. Food distribution centers, organized with military precision, ensured no one went hungry. Children played in the streets under the watchful eyes of human soldiers who looked uncomfortable with the attention, but patient with the curiosity. Then, Yuna showed him the labor camps. The Krath had built 3 major camps where they kept Velen workers. The conditions made even Thesh's multiple stomachs turn. Cramped spaces designed for beings a third the size of adult Velen. Workstations where children had been forced to sort minerals with their delicate manipulator tentacles. Medical waste indicating that the Krath had simply disposed of anyone who became too injured or sick to work. "This is what the Galactic Convention allowed to happen," Yuna said quietly. "While you debated proper procedure, the Krath did this. While you organized peacekeeping committees, Velen children died in these camps." Thesh could not argue. The evidence was overwhelming. The convention exists to prevent excessive force, to protect all parties in conflict. The convention was written by species that never had to make hard choices, Yuna replied. "On Earth, we learned that sometimes protecting the innocent requires being harder than those who harm them. We did not come here to follow your rules. We came here to end slavery." They returned to the command center. Commander Diane was there with his senior officers, reviewing cleanup operations. He greeted Thesh with professional courtesy, but no deference. "Counselor, I understand you have concerns about our methods." "Your methods saved lives," Thesh admitted. "But they also raise questions about human integration into galactic society. The level of violence employed, the disregard for established protocols, the refusal to negotiate with the Krath leadership. The Krath leadership enslaved children," Hana interrupted. She stood near the tactical display, still wearing combat armor. "There is no negotiation with that. There is only elimination." Thesh turned to her. "And who decides where that line is drawn? Who determines when negotiation ends and elimination begins?" "We do," Doyen said simply. "Because we are the ones willing to fight." The conversation was interrupted by an aide bringing news that Grek had requested to speak with Galactic Council representatives. Thesh agreed immediately, seeing an opportunity to understand the Krath perspective. Grek was held in a secured facility, guarded by human soldiers who watched him with the cold eyes of people who had seen what he had done. The former Krath commander sat in a cell designed for beings his size, relatively comfortable by human standards. When Thesh entered, Grek looked up with something approaching relief. "Counselor." Finally, a civilized being. You must intervene. These humans are barbarians. They have violated every convention of warfare. You enslaved an entire planet, Thesh said, which is standard conquest doctrine for my species. Greg replied as if this explained everything. We take resources, we use local labor, we maintain order through strength. This is how power operates in the galaxy. The strong rule the weak. The humans understand this, even if they pretend otherwise. The humans do not rule the Velen. Not yet, Greg said. But they will. Do you think they came here out of kindness? They are predators, Counselor. They saw weakness and opportunity. The only difference between us is that they hide their nature behind words like justice and freedom. The conversation left Thesh troubled. He returned to the command center where a situation was developing. One of the liberated Velen facilities had revealed something unexpected. The Krath had been conducting genetic experiments on captured Velen, trying to breed them for specific labor traits. When Doyon received the report, his face went completely still. Hana actually left the room, her hands clenched into fists. Even Jiho, usually focused entirely on technical matters, looked physically ill. I was not aware the Krath engaged in genetic manipulation, Thesh said carefully. Neither were we, Yuna replied. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. This changes things. How so? Doyen answered. We were contracted to liberate Velen Prime and neutralize the Krath occupation force. That mission is complete. But this, he gestured at the genetic data on the display. This is a crime that requires a response. What kind of response? Thesh asked, though he feared he knew the answer. The Krath Dominion maintains research facilities on 4 other worlds. If they are conducting these experiments here, they are likely conducting them elsewhere. We are going to find out. That is not your authorization, Thesh said. The Galactic Council did not hire you for offensive operations against the Krath Dominion. The Galactic Council did not hire us at all, Yuna reminded him. We are private contractors. The Velen will hire us. Or someone else will. But one way or another, we are going to make sure this never happens again. Thesh realized he was witnessing something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. A species willing to wage war not for territory or resources, but for principle. It was admirable and terrifying in equal measure. The Council will oppose this, he said. The Council is welcome to stop us, Doyen replied. But we both know they cannot. It was true. The human force that had defeated the Krath occupation was a tiny fraction of Earth's military capability. And these were not even official military forces, just mercenaries. The full might of a Deathworld species, organized for war, would overwhelm anything the Galactic Council could muster. What do you want? Thesh asked Yuna. What is Earth's goal here? Yuna considered the question. We want what we have always wanted, to survive. But we learned on Earth that survival is not just about protecting yourself. It is about making sure the strong cannot prey on the weak without consequences. The galaxy has no consequences for species like the Krath. We are going to change that. That evening, Thesh walked through the human base and observed the soldiers. They were efficient, professional, and utterly ruthless when necessary. They were also caring for injured Velen with the same intensity they had shown fighting Krath soldiers. Medical personnel worked around the clock. Engineers rebuilt infrastructure. Soldiers taught Velen. Civilians basic self-defense techniques, he found. Hana supervising a training session where young Velen were learning to use simple weapons. The aquatic beings struggled with the concepts, their evolution having never required violence. Do you think they can learn to fight? Thesh asked. Hana glanced at him. No, but they can learn to not be helpless. On Earth, we have a saying, God made men, but Samuel Colt made them equal. These people will never be warriors. but they can learn to defend themselves well enough that the next slaver species thinks twice. And if there is no next time? If the Council establishes protections? Counselor, with respect, the Council had centuries to establish protections. The Krath operated openly. Everyone knew what they did. Your laws did not stop them. Hana returned her attention to the training session. Our bullets did. Thesh reported back to the Council that evening. His message was complex and troubling. The humans had saved the Velen with remarkable efficiency. They had also revealed themselves as a species that would enforce their own moral code regardless of galactic consensus. The Council faced a choice: embrace humanity's methods or try to contain them. Either option would reshape galactic politics. On Velen Prime, Diane received confirmation that 3 more contracts had been signed. Human forces would be deploying to investigate Krath facilities on other worlds. The mercenary companies were expanding, hiring, preparing for operations across the sector. They will try to stop us eventually, Jiho predicted. Let them try. 1 month after liberation, Velen Prime looked almost normal. The cities were rebuilding. The Velen moved freely through streets that had been controlled by Krath occupation forces. Children played in the water gardens, though they still went quiet when human patrols passed by. Not from fear, but from a kind of nervous respect for beings they did not quite understand. Elder Councilor Pyros prepared for the ceremony with mixed feelings. His people were free. The Krath were gone, their remaining forces having withdrawn from 3 other occupied worlds without a fight the moment. They heard about the human victory on Velen Prime. It should have been a moment of pure celebration. But Pyros had read the contracts. He knew what freedom had cost. The ceremony was held in the central plaza of the capital city. Thousands of Velen gathered to honor their saviors. Pyros stood on the platform with the human commanders. Diane, Hana, Jiho, and Ambassador Yuna. The humans stood at parade rest, formal and professional, their weapons conspicuously absent for the occasion. Pyros began his speech in the traditional Velen manner, with acknowledgments to the water gods and ancestors. Then he turned to the humans. You came when no one else would. You fought when others debated. You risked your lives to free people you had never met. The Velen will remember your courage for all our generations to come. The crowd whistled and clicked their approval. Pyros continued, his next words harder to speak. In gratitude for your service, and in accordance with the agreements signed between our governments, the Velen grant Earth's contractors mining rights to our system's outer moons for a period of 50 standard years. We also enter into a mutual defense agreement and trade partnership that will... He stopped. The crowd had gone silent. Mining rights? Defense agreements? This sounded less like gratitude and more like payment. Doyan stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice carried across the plaza through translator units. Elder Councilor Pyros is too polite to say what needs to be said, so I will. We did not come here out of kindness. We came because you had a problem and we had a solution. That solution cost us ammunition, equipment, and the lives of 8 soldiers who died liberating your world. On Earth, we have a saying, there is no such thing as a free lunch. You wanted Deathworlders? You got them. We fight harder, endure more, and win against impossible odds. But we also expect payment for our services. The silence in the plaza was profound. Yuna watched the Velen faces and saw confusion, disappointment, and growing anger. They had imagined their saviors as noble heroes from ancient stories. Instead, they had hired mercenaries. A young Velen spoke up from the crowd, his voice translator rendering his whistles into galactic standard. You said you came to stop slavery. Was that a lie? Hannah answered before Diane could. We did come to stop slavery. We hate slavers. On Earth, we fought wars to end slavery among our own species. Some of those wars merely destroyed us. We understand the evil of what the Krath did to you." She paused, making sure everyone could hear. But understanding evil and working for free are different things. We risked our lives. We deserve compensation. Another Velen, older, clicked the question. What is the difference between Krath occupation and human contracts? We trade one master for another. Geo spoke up, her engineering mind finding the practical explanation. The Krath took your resources and gave nothing back. They enslaved your children. They would have strip-mined your world until nothing was left. We are taking resources from moons you were not using. We are trading technology and protection. And most importantly, you can break our contract if you wish. You cannot break occupation, can we? Piros asked quietly. Can we really break a contract with a species that defeated the Krath in 3 weeks? What happens if we refuse to pay? Doyan met his eyes. Then we leave. We will not force you to honor contracts. But you should understand, the galaxy knows now that humans respond to distress calls. More importantly, the galaxy knows that we win. Other species will hire us. We will be busy. And the next time someone like the Krath comes to your world, you will face them alone. It was a brutal truth, delivered without apology. The Velen had been saved, but salvation came with strings attached. They could keep their freedom, but they would pay for the protection that maintained it. Piros made a decision. We will honor our agreements. But I want it known that this is not the salvation we hoped for. Hope is a luxury, Una said gently. Survival is a necessity. We gave you survival. Hope is something you will have to build yourselves. The ceremony ended in uncomfortable silence. The Velen dispersed, grateful to be alive, but uncertain about their future. In the following days, Piros noticed that human engineers were already surveying the mining operations on the outer moons. Trade delegations from Earth were negotiating contracts for Velen resources. The humans were efficient, professional, and utterly unsentimental about business. Meanwhile, news of the Velen liberation spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions to discuss the human intervention. Councillor Thesh presented his report with careful neutrality. But the facts spoke for themselves. A small human force had accomplished in weeks what the Council had failed to do in years. The Council split into factions. Some argued for embracing human military capability, suggesting formal alliances and integration of human forces into peacekeeping operations. Others, led by Thesh, called for containment. They are too dangerous, Thesh argued. Not because they are violent, but because they are effective. They have proven that galactic conventions do not apply to them. What happens when human interests conflict with Council policy? What happens when they decide that our methods are insufficient? A counselor from a warrior species that had evolved past violence spoke up. They saved the Velen. Should we punish success? They did not save the Velen out of compassion, Thesh replied. They saved them for profit. They are mercenaries, not heroes. And mercenaries serve whoever pays them. The debate raged for weeks. While the Council argued, something else was happening across the galaxy. Species that had conflicts they could not resolve, problems they could not solve, began reaching out to human contractors. A mining colony trapped by pirates hired a human security team. The pirates surrendered within a day. A trade station dealing with protection rackets from a criminal syndicate hired human enforcers. The syndicate vanished. A colony world facing invasion from an aggressive neighbor hired human military advisors. The invasion was cancelled after the potential invaders saw footage of what happened on Velen Prime. Within 3 months, human mercenary companies had contracts across a dozen systems. They were expensive, they were brutal when necessary, and they always delivered results. Species that had existed under galactic conventions for centuries discovered that hiring Deathworlders was extremely effective at solving problems that diplomacy could not touch. On Earth, the government watched this expansion with mixed feelings. The mercenary companies were private, not state-controlled, but they represented humanity's first major influence in galactic affairs. Some politicians argued for regulation. Others pointed out that the companies were doing more to establish human reputation than any diplomatic mission could achieve. Ambassador Una returned to Station Harmony to find her office flooded with requests. Species wanted to hire humans. Others wanted to restrict human operations. Some wanted to study human military doctrine. A few wanted to negotiate defensive alliances. Counselor Thesh visited her office one evening, finding her reviewing contracts by the dim light that humans preferred. "You have changed the galaxy," he said without preamble. "We answered a distress call," Una replied. "You did more than that. You proved that the Council's methods are insufficient. You showed that there are problems in the galaxy that require solutions we cannot provide." Thesh settled into a chair designed for his multi-limbed body. "I have spent my life promoting peace, diplomacy, and negotiated settlements. I believe violence was a last resort, something to be avoided whenever possible. And now? Now I understand that peace only works when everyone agrees to be peaceful." The Krath did not agree. Neither will the next aggressive species, or the one after that. You humans evolved on a world where everything tried to kill you. You learned that survival sometimes requires being more dangerous than your threats. Una nodded slowly. "We did, but that lesson came at a terrible cost. Earth's history is written in blood. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. We committed atrocities in the name of survival. We are not proud of everything we did to get here. Yet here you are, alive, thriving, expanding into space. Yes, because we learned to balance brutality with civilization. We learned when to fight and when to talk. We learned that being strong does not mean being cruel." Una looked at the contracts on her desk. "I hope we can teach the galaxy that lesson without making them learn it the way we did." Thesh considered this. "I am proposing to the Council that we establish formal protocols for human military contractors. Not to restrict you, but to integrate your capabilities into galactic security in a structured way. We will not follow rules that get people killed," Una warned. "I know, but perhaps we can find common ground. The Council's diplomatic experience and humanity's military effectiveness, working together rather than in opposition.